So as we saw, a rule of thumb, like it's a general accurate guide for what to do. And the key thing here is it's based on real experience, not theory.
Okay.
So you don't learn a rule of thumb by reading books. You learn it by doing it again and again until you go, okay, I know what to do now.
Okay.
For example, my rule of thumb for writing is to get to the end of a story before you start editing it. Otherwise, you might just get lost in the middle and never finish.
Okay.
And I've learned that through experience, so it's a rule of thumb.
There you go. It's something you taught yourself by doing it, noticing things, and coming up with sort of a general rule. All right, let's get back to the article. It says, if you move the plants to bigger pots with new soil, however, you should also wait a week before watering them. I'll read that again. If you move the plants to bigger pots with new soil, however, you should wait a week before watering them. Yeah, sometimes as plants grow, you want to move them to a bigger home. Basically, the soil is the dirt, that stuff that you plant the plant in, and sometimes transferring the plant, like moving your own home, can be a difficult thing.
Yes.
You might be lost in your new home. The plant might be kind of lost in its new pot. So wait a week, let it kind of settle, and then give it some water. That's a common thing that actually I didn't know. All right? And let's talk about the soil. Let's talk about the dirt that you put the plant in.
The article says when it comes to the soil, it's important that the soil, has large particles.
So the little bits of dirt are quite big.
That's right.
Well, actually, when you think about it, succulents, cacti, they grow in the desert. Sand is actually quite large particles.
Comparatively large,
compared to, the dirt in a farm or something.
Okay, so here we see when it comes to, this is a phrase, and we use this to introduce a new idea, to consider it, and then give an opinion. So when it comes to this is what we do or think of.
Okay.
For example, when it comes to sports, I would say that soccer and cricket are my favorites.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so yeah, we got this word particle.
Yes, a particle, as I mentioned just earlier, is a very small piece of something. It might have broken off or fallen off something. We might, for example, talk about the crumbs that get on your shirt after you eat a cookie. Those little bits that fall, well, that's a bit of cookie, but it's not a whole cookie. It's a particle of cookie. When scientists or when police are looking for evidence at a murder scene, they might be looking for particles of material, little tiny pieces of something that comes from a bigger thing. And when we're talking about sand, well, pick up one tiny little piece of sand that you can see on your finger. That's one particle of sand. And of course, a beach is made up of billions of particles of sand, or little pieces of something.
So why do we want large particles of soil? Well, the article explains this makes it easier for water to pass through it.
Like the sand in the desert.
Yeah, so if to pass through something is to go from one side and to the other side. So here, what we want is we don't want, really, the water to get trapped in the soil. If the soil is very fine, so that's very, very small particles. So
it's very close together.
Yeah, then it will all kind of get lumped together with the water, and the water won't really go through. So the succulent could end up getting too much water. We want the water to pass through it, give the succulent what it needs, and then go out again.
Interesting. So basically, if you give it too much water or put it in the wrong soil, it's like drowning your plant. It's going to get too much water, more than it needs to live. And water, it says, is not the only essential element, though. So there's something else that it's important to keep your succulent happy and healthy. And we mentioned there that water isn't the only essential thing. Essential is an adjective. It's quite long. Are you ready? E-S-S-E-N-T-I-A-L. Essential. Something that's essential is necessary, very important. If you don't have it, you're not going to be successful. Things will not work out. For example, for humans and most other living things, water is essential. Air and oxygen that we can breathe is essential, and food is also essential. I'd also say maybe clothes are essential, or a dry place to live are essential. So the idea here is if you go to space and you don't have water, food, or air, you're in big trouble because you need those things to live. They are essential. Very, very, very important. Well, I'm not much of a gardener or a farmer, but even I know that water is essential for plants.
Water is, yes.
But what else is essential for succulents?
Well, our article says, in fact, wind and sun are even more important.
Sun, I would have guessed, but
Yes.
wind.
Wind, yeah, you need air moving over the succulents.
Interesting.
Apparently, I'm not 100% sure why, but this is what we were told by the experts in the shop. Wind, sun, and water are the three things you need. Maybe in that order.
Keep it near an open window or put a fan on it or some. Deserts can be windy.
Very windy.
They don't get a lot of rain, but they do get wind. Therefore, the article says you must ensure that your plants get plenty of both. To ensure, this verb basically means to make sure that something happens, to guarantee, to be positive that this is going to take place.
Okay, so if you've got all this right, then you should have some healthy plants. And our article says you can tell when your succulents are healthy as they should smell like ginseng or rich earthy soil. Ginseng or rich earthy soil.
Really?
So ginseng is a plant which has thick roots. It's often used in Chinese traditional medicine.
Yes.
The most common kind here is called hongshen. I think that's how you pronounce it. It should smell either a bit like that or earthy soil, which is kind of healthy, wet, moist, good soil, not
kind
like
of heavy
dry
black
dust.
soil.
Yeah, it's kind of like the good earthy smell you might get after going outside in the woods, that's maybe just after a rain. That kind of healthy, growing sort of smell of wet earth.
Now remember, that's just the smell of the succulent, not the soil. The soil should be kind of sandy soil, but the plant should smell like heavy, wet soil, maybe on a farm after a rainy day or something like that. And it says one final piece of advice for all you succulent farmers and gardeners out there is not to put different species of succulent in the same soil. So you can grow different ones at the same time, but not in the same soil, because if you do, they'll fight, right?
That's pretty
They're
much
gonna punch each other and kick and kung fu.
Close to. So remember, species from yesterday, we mean these two things which are similar enough to breed. Well, here we're saying don't put two of different species, different ones that aren't the same in the soil.
Desert cactus and your aloe vera should be in different pots.
Absolutely. Now, this is a piece of advice. Advice is spelled A-D-V-I-C-E. Careful not to confuse it with advise, the verb form with an S. Advice is guidance. It's something that someone gives you to tell you either the right thing to do or what they think they should do. It's supposed to help you. Advice is supposed to tell you this is the best way to do something, this is what you should do or think about. Although we can have, of course, bad advice as well. We want good advice. Here's an example. Have you got 10 minutes? I really need your advice about something.
Oh, okay. Now remember, of course, advice is not countable. So you can't say advices. You say some advice, a little advice, or lots of advice. Well, we've gotten a lot of good advice about growing succulents. And as we go on, it says, why don't we want to put them in the same pot? Well, if you do, they'll compete for resources. Okay, they will
They do kind of fight.
They do sort of fight, but it's not something you'll want to sell tickets to and, watch on TV, the big cactus battle. No, it means they're going to compete for resources. To compete, this verb is spelled C-O-M-P-E-T-E. And it's kind of like to fight, to play against, to try to beat the other guy. So when you're playing a card game or a computer game or a sport, or when armies are fighting in a battle, these different teams or groups or people are competing. They're trying to beat the other guy. One wants to be the winner. The other one doesn't want to be the loser. And we talk about competing for resources. They're kind of fighting over water.
Food, we'll look into that.
There's not much there. Interesting stuff. Let's get back to our example sentence for compete. It says, in the jungle, the plants grow very tall as they compete for sunlight. Oh, so when one plant gets here and the other one plant gets here and the sun's up there, then this guy has to go up higher. They're competing. They're trying to be closest to the sun.
So here, the succulents would be competing for resources, okay? A resource or a resource, you can say it both ways, is spelled R-E-S-O-U-R-C-E. We often say resources to mean more than one, and it's the thing or things needed in order for something to grow, to support itself, and to work effectively. It can vary a great deal depending on the subject we're talking about. So plants need their resources of food, water, sunlight. For companies, their resources could be cash, people, the products they make, their electricity. So when we're talking about these plants competing for resources, we mean they're in the same soil, they're trying to get each other's water, they're trying to grow their roots, so they're fighting for space, all that kind of thing. Here's an example sentence. The country doesn't have many natural resources, so it must import a lot of food and power. And that competition isn't the only reason why you want to grow them separately.
That's right. It says furthermore, or in addition, also, some succulents grow in winter while others grow in summer. So be aware of this. It's sort of an all year round thing, but some of them might be requiring a little bit more care and attention depending on what season we're talking about. Yes, we use that adverb furthermore. Furthermore. Put it into a word and it's spelled F-U-R-T-H-E-R-M-O-R-E. Yeah, we use it in very much the same way as in addition, also, and we're adding information. We had a sentence with lots of information, and then we want to add another sentence with more information. So you're just basically tying these two ideas together, saying this stuff's all true and this stuff's all true, so pay attention to all of it quite equally. For example, Kevin did really well in the job interview. Furthermore, he has all the qualifications needed for the job. So
hire him.
That's right. 2 reasons why he had a great job interview, and he'll probably get hired.
Yep. So this thing about when they grow, which time of year, we also have to be aware of that, which means we have to remember and pay attention to that particular fact because it affects what you are doing. So you need to know, because of this, then this, so I need to be aware of that particular thing. So that's all these things. So it's not just as easy as going, here's a plant, here's the soil, here's water, leave it alone. They are fairly easy to grow, but as we ended day 1, you need to know the ins and outs, which we've just kind of been telling you about.
That's right. And as the article wraps up, it says, if you follow all of these handy tips, you're sure to have many beautiful succulents growing in your home or office. And I believe some of them, these plants, they can live a very long time.
They can. I had a cactus that was about 15 years old.
15 years old?
No, maybe 10. Maybe
wow,
10.
They live longer than many dogs.
Yes.
That's quite incredible. Well, all of this information that we've been learning for the past couple days is very handy. It's very useful. Basically the same thing. Handy is an adjective. It's spelled H-A-N-D-Y, just like hand with a Y on the end. Yes, and if we say something is handy, it's useful, it's practical, it makes our lives easy and more convenient. Just like if something is near your hands and you can reach out and grab it without walking a long way, it's very handy. It's almost right there in your hand, and it makes your life and job and whatever you're doing easier and more convenient. For example, this handy tool can be used to open bottles, remove screws, open letters, and more. Sounds like one of those Swiss Army knives.
It does indeed.
Yeah.
Another phrase we saw in that last sentence was be sure to. You're sure to enjoy the beautiful succulents and so on. If we use this phrase be sure to in this way, we're meaning you'll be certain to. And it's used to predict that something will happen and something will be a success.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is the end of our article. We should have told you everything you need to know about what succulents are and how to take care of them, which means it's time to go to today's For You chat question.